is located. How are you guys doing, our panelists? Thank you all so much for coming. From Debbie to Asantewaa to Pat, if you guys don't mind just spending, 5 to 10 minutes, introducing to our audience, talk about a little bit about yourself and your work, and about, the ongoing struggles that you are engaged with currently in the community. And could someone help them to the mic?
Well, thank you guys so much for having me here. A much older version of that woman I was in the video. This isn't like my full-time job. I work for the school district of Philadelphia. I do this in my spare time, I guess. I think I get very emotional when I see this. It's over 20 years old, this video, and it brings back a lot of memories. And I think as I look at the people in the video, I realize how much it speaks to me about the importance of community. I know where everybody is now. Their grandmother has passed. They were working in the city. Andy got married, got 3 kids. Shifu had a stroke recently, 2 years ago. His wife passed and he had a stroke. And so it's quite a bit debilitated. The school's closed now. Sam, the guy walking around with his baby daughter, is one of the major organizers fighting against the arena right now. His daughter's now 21. The little kid in the beginning that was playing the drum in the march, that's my oldest son. He's now 34. The kid that was the Monkey King, that was my younger son. He's now 32. The man that said that's my Monkey King, that's the Monkey King, that was my father. He's passed on now. And when I said at the end that I'm gonna have to fight this and my kids will have to fight it, my youngest daughter wasn't even an idea at the time of this video. She's now one of the organizers of the Students for the Preservation. One of the important things that this tells us is that community matters, relationships matter, memory matters, and that resistance is a tradition and it needs to be passed down as much as all the cultural pieces that we tried to reclaim as an act of resistance through Mid-Autumn Festival. Keeping our community is also a tradition that we pass on. We take it. It's funny because a lot of the young people call me an elder now, and it makes me feel weird. I used to be older sister, and then I don't know how people know this in the community, but suddenly you become auntie. And 2 years ago, I got my first grandma. I was like, I will say this about this current struggle. It's the hardest one we've had to fight yet, because conditions have changed. Capitalism there's not much left to buy and sell. And so that's why you see people coming for the public schools. That's why you see things that were always part of the public becoming monetized. And what has happened now is that housing is now a commodity. Started about 20 years ago, but really gained speed in 2008 when the banks crashed. And Obama made the decision to bail out Goldman Sachs and Lehman Brothers instead of middle-class families that were trying to hold on to their homes. And so Blackstone, people like that came in, bought those homes and started actually trading housing on the stock market. Housing is now considered a commodity like gold, like it's an equity thing that's traded. And so what we're facing now is not gentrification. Gentrification is like a slower process, one person at a time, one house at a time. This is corporate greed at unprecedented levels, and it's not just in Philadelphia, and it's just not just in the US, it's in the world. So much so that Blackstone was called out by the United Nations for violating the human right to housing. Now, the United Nations, you know, it is what it is, but it does call out entities for human rights violations. Usually it's a government. Sometimes it's a political party. You have to do a lot of bad shit to be called out as a corporation, right? Just as a single company. So who are the developers? David Blitzer is the global head of tactical opportunities for the Blackstone Group. Josh Harris was partner, founder of Apollo. Apollo bought Potomac Hospital, drove it into the ground and shut it down. One of the only community hospitals in Philadelphia. David Edelman is the CEO of Campus Apartments out in West Philly. Probably the biggest driver of gentrification in West Philly. You know, we see the struggle at UC Townhomes, but they're the last remnant standing of what he's done. But he's doing this all over the country. It's not just Penn. He gentrified Howard. He gentrified Emory. He's just like, he's an equal opportunity community killer. He also owns other things. He owns hotels in Philly where he does not pay. I was talking to folks in Unite who are trying to organize the workers in his hotels. So we're talking about people who, well, all three of them are multi-billionaires, right? They, I think Blitzer last time I checked was worth, I want to say at least $6 billion. Like, who, why, like, who needs that much money? Like, I don't even know what you do with that much money as an they, like, I'm looking at this stuff and I'm thinking, this is just way bigger than an arena. Once I figured out who these guys were, I'm like on a mission to figure out how we as people unite with people across the country and across the world to take these people on. Yeah. You know, Chinatown always fought against the odds, so my kids look at me and say, "You think you're going to take Blackstone down?"
Yeah.
Yes. I kind of, I don't, some of you probably know who Grizzly Boggs was, elder of our community. She was a mentor of mine. And I remember when she was in her 90s, she sat me down and said, "The problem is you're stuck in Newtonian physics." And I'm looking at her, she's learning something. I'm sorry, Auntie Grace, I have no idea what the hell you're talking about. She goes, "You know, Newtonian physics, cause and effect. And you think you feel helpless now." And I was feeling kind of helpless in the face of globalization and all these other forces. And she said, "Because you think you need something big to change stuff. And we have different understanding of how the world works now. We've moved on, it's quantum physics. I'm like, okay. But she explained, quantum physics, it's like the butterfly wing effect, right? Like you don't know things that you do, the effects that it's going to have. And so those words gave me a lot of hope, a lot of sense that we may not win this fight. I think we're doing a damn good job, but we are against some incredibly powerful forces in an election year when people who are our elected officials need a lot of money and they got a lot of money, right? So we know what this fight is, but I feel like we've already won. Because even if these guys get their arena, we are using every opportunity to educate people on who they are and what they're doing. Talking to my daughter now about uniting. University of California just spent $4 billion investing in Blackstone's real estate equity. $4 billion. At the same time, they gave Blackstone the contract to build their student housing. So university housing has been privatized. She's ready to murder me, but I'm telling her she's got to start a national divestment movement. She's got to demand that universities stop privatizing student housing. They've got to start demanding that all their universities and the unions connected to them, their pension funds, divest from these housing equity trusts. And I believe we can do it. I believe we can create this movement. So yeah, I continue to have a lot of hope and really thank you all.
Thank you, Debbie. I really enjoy the physics and dynamics reference there. Okay, and next we have Asantewaa. So Asantewaa is going to give us a presentation.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Asantewaa Nkrumeh-Ture. My pronouns are she, her, and co-conspirator. That means if you're fighting for justice, I'm a co-conspirator with you. I don't care where you live. I don't care what you look like. I don't care who you have sex with. I'm a co-conspirator. That means Debbie is a co-conspirator. I want to thank the Compact of PSL for organizing this event and thank you all for this invitation. I want to thank all of you for coming out this afternoon. This is truly, truly a pleasure. I want to thank Debbie for her many decades of struggle and work. And when I first met Debbie a few months ago, we just clicked, probably because also I had on a t-shirt of Mama Yuri Kuchiyama. I want to thank Patricia DeCarlo. Patricia, you and I have met somewhere, I don't know where, but I've only been in Philly for 8 years, but we've met somewhere, some organizing. But so I'm here on behalf of the Philadelphia Tenants Union, and we want to express our warmest solidarity to Debbie, to Patricia, to the Asian Americans United, to the Chinatown Coalition to Oppose the Arena, the No Arena in Chinatown Affinity Group, the Students for the Preservation of Chinatown, the Asian Pacific Islander Political Alliance, and all those now joined together to organize to defeat the proposed $1.3 billion arena. Struggle and victories against previous attempts to gentrify their community. So as I said in the community meeting back in December, the 76ers have no right, legal and certainly not moral, to build this arena. They have no right to destroy Chinatown. Why do they need an arena in Chinatown? Chinatown is a community with a proud history, and it is not a playground for rich white men who probably don't even live in Philadelphia. Right now, the whole country is watching. Philadelphia, Chinatown must win this one. We must win this one. Because it's not just Chinatown, it could be anybody. It could be Washington Avenue in South Philadelphia. It could be Woodland Avenue and Elmwood Avenue, Little Africa in West Philadelphia. It could be the Badlands over here in North Philadelphia. It could be any part of this city. So we're gonna have to be all in this together. We're going to all organize and get it done. Now, I'm also a church sister. Some of y'all may not even think so. But I believe in the story of David and Goliath. And we can do this one. We just have to organize, be strategic, and make it happen. Because now gentrification is becoming more of a cancer across this city. So we need all of our great minds to come together. And having said that, I want to show a little bit of a PowerPoint. So as I was researching for today's event, I found out that, and Debbie, you had mentioned this before too in a previous conversation, that the attacks on Chinatown across this country have been going on for several years. Can you imagine? Several years. So the next slide. This is an effort. I'm sorry, I forget what city this is, but it's someplace on the West Coast. You know where that is?
No. It could be any number of.
It's somewhere on the West Coast, but it's really going on, and they're really going after Chinatown. Next slide. All right. Some of you all were probably at these events. Debbie, you mentioned it earlier. Students for the Preservation of Chinatown. That young lady looks familiar, Debbie.
That's Karen Flaherty. She's Helen Gibbs' daughter. And my daughter's standing next to her over here. They protested the casino together in 2008, and they've been protesting and organizing ever since.
How about that?
Like 3 years old.
How about that?
Thing, is that you?
Yeah.
And the next slide is SPOT. You go back a minute. I just want to show the SPOT and the Save UC Townhomes campaign joining together because we have mutual interests. We want our community to survive, because we also have a mutual enemy, and that's all these developers and gentrifiers. All right, next one. That's the community meeting back in December. Place was packed. The press conference in January, where the information came out about this law firm that's going to be working with you all. What's the name of the law firm?
All that Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund. I also contacted the rapporteur who wrote the Blackstone Letter of Concern for the UN. She's a housing rights organizer now in Canada, and she will be assisting us as well.
All right, next slide. These are just some of a few books that are out here now being written about gentrification. The one over here on the far left, Field of Schemes. I haven't read that yet, but I plan to read it because what we're seeing also is a lot of these quote unquote arenas and stadiums are being built. Sometimes it's using private money, but sometimes it uses public money as well. Gentrification is inevitable and other lies. In the Shadow of the Ivory Tower. I have skimmed this book. I haven't finished reading it, but what I like about this book, it talks about the role of universities in gentrification efforts. And he mentions the University of Pennsylvania. So, having said all that, all I will say is that we have a lot of great minds in our social justice movement, and we must continue to come together to finally and permanently defeat this latest attempt to destroy Chinatown. The community organizers, the artists, political strategists, the teachers, researchers, historians, lawyers, students, youth and elders, media strategists, the clergy of various denominations and faith. Chinatown must win this one. We must win this one, because when we organize, we win. Thank you. I want to give a special shout out to PSL. Now, I've been a member of the Philadelphia Tenants Union since 2017. And last year I was in my own personal housing crisis where someone sold a house, but they forged the lease and gave the new owner a fake lease and all that other kind of craziness. But I want to say that I won that case. We won that case because I'm in an organization. We get political education in the Philadelphia Tenants Union, and I knew my rights. So this is what we're here for today, how we're going to plan this and win and know our rights. But I want to give a special shout out to PSL because my PSL comrades came through. I had to have security 24 hours a day for 10 days from February the 6th to February 16th when we went to court and we won, to make sure that I was safe and to make sure my belongings were not thrown outside, right? We were threatened with guns. We were called all kind of racist and sexist and transphobic names. I was called the N-word and a B-word in a Jamaican accent. You feel me? You feel me? So I'm saying all that to say, when we organize, we stand firm and we can win. Thank you. Call me. No, seriously, we had a young man on Monday this week who was illegally evicted from his apartment. He was given 30-day notice. The landlord came 2 weeks early. All his clothes and things were packed up and crated off. I have tried to call that young man this week. I haven't heard back. I don't know if he's all right, has clothes, has his food, whatever. But the illegal evictions that go on in this city, we need to do something about that as well. So stay tuned.
Thank you, Asantewaa. That was very powerful. Okay, now we have Patricia DeCarlo of the local community.
So thank you for sharing this event with us. I live right here, a couple doors down. I've been here over 35, 40 years. When I first came, it was known as the Backlash, according to the Philadelphia Inquirer. And the community at a grassroots level decided with the Northport Civic Association you could either wait for the government to come and rescue you, or you just take charge of the place and you do what you need to do. There were abandoned cars where tree branches were growing out of the cars. That's how long they've been abandoned. There were a lot of abandoned buildings without windows, and the basements were busted open, so people would sort of walk over and throw their trash inside the basement, which I could never understand because they were carrying big bags of trash and walking to this place to do it. And then I realized they were renting a third floor that had absolutely no access to where they could put the trash. So they threw the trash in someone's basement that was abandoned. The park right here was full of shattered glass because the local fun thing to do was to take your beer bottle and try to hit the tree and have it smashed. So all the sidewalks were just pieces of glass. So that's where I came into, and the community then getting together and say, okay, what are the priorities? And the people setting up the priority, getting people to work together, slowly but surely moved and changed the things, including starting our own construction company, taking over vacant buildings, turning them into affordable housing, but the work was done by people from the neighborhood as opposed to hiring contractors from outside. We started a dual language childcare center because the parents said there was a childcare center over at the church, but they only spoke English and they had these big fences where the kids would grab on like this and look like they were in prison. And the community said, and we don't want a drop off laundry kind of childcare. We want one where we, the parents, are involved. I don't have children. I have no idea what they're talking about, but we made it our business to find out. There's something called Head Start Childcare, and we went out and did that. And sure enough, it became a dual language program where folks, just in case you don't know, I'm Puerto Rican. Spanish is a Latin. There you go. Spanish is a lot easier language to learn than English. Whether you're American, German, French, whatever, Spanish is a lot easier to learn because it has 5 vowel sounds. A, E, I, O, period, end of story. As opposed to the 15 sounds you all have in English, right? So whatever your background is, trust me, if you have children, get them to learn Spanish, not in high school, in grade school or before grade school, because that's when your computer is empty and fresh. So back to the organizing piece, one of the things that I find really interesting, I've always admired Chinatown because I don't know another community that has so bravely and fiercely resisted the stupidity of trying to build over that neighborhood. And for those of you who think of it as that it's tourists that go there, yeah, maybe some tourists, but yeah, they have a right to learn in a more unique way what not just the Chinese, but the Asian communities are like. So if we remember, this country was founded for immigrants, but what happens is that then once the immigrant comes in, we start picking on them and want them out. And the last one to come in is the next one we're gonna pick and kick out the next immigrant group. It's a sad history, but it's a split always in this country. There are those who really support immigrants and those who, for some reason, sometimes I think it's, well, I got kicked in the butt when I was an immigrant, so now I get to kick the butt of the next one coming in. I don't know. But what we need to remember is that it's not only the issue of gentrification, which is that income thing of people wanting to make money, irrespective of who it hurts. But the other thing of maintaining Chinatown, that to me is so important, is it is a cultural, historical piece, as much as, with all the respect of Americans, the Liberty. Why? Because it is a clear neighborhood that's different, speaks a different language, has a different culture, has different food. We learn from it. We don't have to travel to China to find out. It's right there. And then we learn to adapt. The second thing that was interesting, and remember the Italian market? The Italians almost lost the Italian market, right? And then they fought back to sort of get it back. It's sort of like halfway there. But we should take part of this battle, not just gentrification, but that we should preserve the culture of the immigrant communities that come in so that we can learn from each other and stop hating each other. Because if we all sort of absorb and go to the, to the suburbs and become accepted and sort of like hide in there and become American, we're gonna keep hating immigrants. It's just stupid. So yes, forget gentrification. Besides gentrification, you are a cultural icon of a neighborhood. And there's Chinese folks all over the city living, but that one is where you go to learn stuff about your culture, your food, your history, and we need to preserve those. We need to do the same thing in the Puerto Rican community, which is where you're at right now.
Exactly.
Right now, if people are speaking in Spanish, or the music goes real loud, which is part of our culture, right?
I too.
Yeah. So some people get annoyed. One guy told me that, oh, there's so much trash here. Don't you get depressed? You need to pick up the trash. I live in a corner property. So everybody and their grandma throws trash, around the 3 sides of my house. And I say, Mira, it's your turn to pick up the trash. We've been picking up the trash now for 30, 40 years. So now it's your turn to do that.
Welcome to the neighborhood.
And now it's amazingly different. We did that. So now, if you're getting depressed about the trash, do me a favor, go pick it up and shut up. The only thing that's happening, we have homeless people because The rents have gone, a 1-bedroom apartment, 1 bedroom, now goes for $1,200. Used to be $300. Our taxes this year blew out. I have a side yard. Last year was assessed at $52,000. This year they assessed it at $400,000. From 1 year to the next. And so somebody said, oh, well, Pat, that means that you can make money, you can sell the property. I said, but I don't feel like selling the property because it's in my home. What it does is evicting people from the neighborhood by raising the taxes that they can't afford, and now they're gonna have to move. So and why did this happen this quickly? Well, Mr. Trump came up with the opportunity zone. Hopefully all of you have heard that. There are several opportunity zones in the city of Philadelphia. If you have to pay capital gains because you either sold the property or you sold some artwork or whatever makes people make money, capital gains, and you have to pay 30% capital gains tax. If you took that money and you invested it in this neighborhood and bought a property, zero capital gains. You invested it here. And then if you kept that property for 7 to 10 years and it went up in value, yes, it goes up in value, then you don't have to pay capital gains either. So if you know a little bit about finances and you've heard about that, why wouldn't you come here and invest? Right? You know why? Because you're putting us out, and we put a lot of work into getting our neighborhood back to a reasonable way of raising children. And so for me, we've got we need to protect immigrant communities and their neighborhoods so they become cultural masterpieces to the rest of the country and the world of what the planet is like. So we stop hating people all over the world and we understand them better where they're coming from, right? If we had all those model neighborhoods like Chinatown. And so that's one. It's this thing of accepting other people in these places. It's the business of stopping to the business of making money, the rational top priority of this world. Was out there. I have good friends who are good people who say, but Pat, look at all the money you're going to be making. It killed me. That's where I planted my fig tree, my apple tree, my Christmas tree, and my doggy runs around. I don't give a crap. It's my property. You can't do that to people because that's a really easy way of doing it. So it's changing. And the third one is, and I'm going to offend some people here, but this country has a long history of making communism a dirty, evil word, and socialism comes right behind it. Let's try to explain socialism as a normal human thing.
I'm with that.
Around the world, and since most folks are from some kind of European background, let's use and have the politicians use that language of, oh, looky over here, Norway has that. Oh, Germany has that. So that people get to understand, Donnie, that you're being taken for a ride. That it ain't socialism and communism. It's that this country puts first, forgot the immigrant was to come here and get to work, but it's putting first the business of making money at whatever expense. And then no, it's not normal, it's not human, it's not the right thing to do. And let's start then joining together across different communities so that we all fight for the same thing, which is, to me, we have how many people running for mayor? 10 or 11?
Too many.
Have you heard any of them talk about making affordable housing? I haven't. It's about getting rid of crime, sort of education, right? But it's like, the reason we have all this crime is because those kids are real angry. And it's not to excuse, but they are, they're angry. They suffered a lot. And what I learned early on when I came here, if you see graffiti, the people are angry. And that's the kids' way of showing their anger, is by doing this graffiti thing. So let's figure out how to work together, how to use language that is more acceptable to the people that you want to convince, because if we keep using the same language that they've been trained to hate, then they're so, oh, but if we do the language that they say, oh, really? They cover education and health for everybody? And where's that? Yeah, most of Europe does that, dummy. So let's get the information straight, because obviously our government is not doing that. And it's getting worse and worse and worse. Have a good day. Well, that's the other thing, that those two, the generation that just comes and the generation that's been raised here, they start picking at each other. Sad things happens to us too. Not nice.
Yeah, thank you, Pat, for the very anecdotal but revealing stories. That just really, reveals how the capitalist system that we live under don't work for us, but it's worked. It's used to, to work against us. Our tax dollars that we pay out of our labor and our time and existence on this earth, on this universe. That so much of it doesn't get invested back to the world, right? Our roads are, the potholes, the infrastructure, trains, buses, it's all deteriorating, there's no public cleaning, like, why is that? This is our money that we created, that we paid, that we should be used, for our, our benefit.
But they got a 10 or 15-year tax abatement.
How about that?
Yeah.
Our tax went up. We figured.
Okay, so now, we're going to open up the floor to our audience here. If anyone has, any general questions, comments, and concerns on the documentary, or for any of our panelists, I can take cues, just raise your hand and I'll pick on you. Yeah.
Yeah, hi, my name is Diana Quinones. I first came here in 1996 from New York, from the Lower East Side. And I do have to say that having been raised in the Lower East Side, I just walked up the block, made a right, and it was like you had a Puerto Rican Jewish neighborhood, Little Italy in Chinatown. I went to junior high school in Chinatown, went to high school in Chinatown. When I was thrown out of my regular high school for getting knocked up in my senior year, I went to an alternative high school in Chinatown. I received my healthcare in Chinatown. With that being said, coming here in 1996, no one wanted to live in the neighborhood. There was one community that did open up the door to me separate from North Square. And the only place that I can go to that I felt at home was Chinatown in Philadelphia. So for the record, I'm not anti-sports, I'm not anti-76ers. I am anti the billionaire pigs that thinks they're okay to just play to community. When they can get their ass right across the country heaven, sorry, just like the Giants did in New York, because the Giants in New York go to Jersey. There's plenty of space over there. With that being said, we support Chinatown. I support Chinatown, and thank you for inviting.
Hey, Meg, can I have a question?
Yeah.
So for your comment, can we get your name and contact information, and Debbie can put you on the list? So we're going out canvassing tomorrow afternoon.
I'm a church girl, just like you, Mom. And I don't look at astounded, but I'm asking.
Okay, we can do that. That's 1 to 4. We can talk.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Yeah.
Hello, I'm Quentin. I'm a member of PSL. I guess I just wanted to ask a little bit more about the universities. Like, we have both Temple and UPenn here, and how to organize and force them to address the level of gentrification. It's their arguments are always that we're cleaning this up, or bringing in new blood into the city, more money and things, and like how do we see the struggles interconnected between the stadiums, but also the universities as this kind of like real estate company that also teaches classes essentially.
I think, again, like one of the advantages of being of a certain age is that we remember a time when universities were not supposed to be making money. They were not supposed to be for profit. They're not supposed to be doing unlimited development. That is not normal. That is another sign of what is happening in the financialization of everything. So I'm just getting into this stuff. I'm not like, it's something I've never really studied before, but the first thing I realized is, I did go to college. And when I went to college, I lived in a dorm. Because student housing was not privatized. Student housing was meant to be part of the educational responsibility of the institution, part of the educational experience of students. And so what we've seen is this wholesale privatization. Like students at Penn were telling me they had 700 students on a waiting list for housing just this semester. And that's only the students who bothered to get on the waiting list, because most students know you're never going to get it anyway. And so it forces students to go to these private landlords who are increasing their monopoly because they are now equity firms. And so that's why David Edelman can make bank. And then he turns around and he donates back to the university, just what University of California did, right? They took their money, invested in Blackstone, and then gave Blackstone their business. It helps them make money. It helps students increase student debt, right? Without any accountability. At least when you had dorms, the university was accountable for the conditions in the housing and accountable for the wages of the workers who work to maintain those spaces. Now there is like absolutely no accountability. And I do want to say that taxes are increasing and rents are going higher. Again, this is a housing equity firms doing this, because the higher they can charge rent, the higher they're artificially inflating the value of housing. And that is so their investors get a higher return. And they don't give a shit if it is at the expense of people having a place to live. They don't even care if it's empty. If they can inflate that price and make it artificially appear more valuable, their investors make money. And so real estate taxes are going up. Yes, you see billboards that say crap like, we buy homes with cash. Who has cash to buy homes? Not normal people. Not normal people. Equity firms have cash to buy homes. So like, this is, the size of this monster is unbelievable. Like, why do these developers get tax abatements, but the long-term residents who are getting gentrified actually are the ones that should have the tax abatements? The rich should be paying more taxes, right? And long-term residents should be tax protected. So everything's messed up, but a lot of that has to do with this rotten corruption in the system. I think students have a specific role because their housing market is also part of this puzzle. It's a huge part of this puzzle. It is one of the major spaces that these equity firms are going, campus housing. And so I do think for university students, you got a lot of skin in the game, not to mention that one is divestment from REITs, from real estate investment trusts. Students should demand that their universities and the pensions associated with the unions in the universities need to divest, so they cannot be investing in these equity firms whose job it is to create homelessness and to commodify housing. Not okay. So we divest in that and we demand an end to the privatization of student housing. We demand that the cost of living for students not be placed on students' backs through increased debt. Like, this is the university's responsibility. And then, like, universities have to just stop giving these landlords a monopoly on gaining income from their students. It's a game. Edelman donates money back to Penn, right? It's so corrupt, but it's like, people don't see it, like, because it just is so out there. But Josh Harris, David Blitzer, they're both on the board of Wharton. David Blitzer is on the board of trustees of Penn. Right, like, these guys, they are targeting colleges and universities as much as they are targeting our communities. So yeah, students have a lot of skin in this.
And I also add, what was really interesting, and thanks for your question, looking at the student groups, the students at Penn, Drexel, and how they came together around UC townhomes, and how they've come together around Chinatown now and some other things, is that to the extent that students and other people realize this, and then how they spin a narrative to try to make the students like that they're just young and they're youthful, they don't know what they're talking about, et cetera. But these students are very well educated on these issues. They've done a lot of research. They have access to resources for research that maybe the rest of us do not have. So that's been very helpful, right? If you're looking at, in the case of UC townhomes and the role of the University of Pennsylvania in terms of wiping out what was formerly known as the Black Bottom and all of that history, which you can still find on the Save UC Townhomes website, it's very, very good history that we all need to know.
I was thinking, in terms of practical thinking, because sometimes we get a little too fancy. There's a hugely important election around the corner. And it's more important than ever, because when you have 11 candidates running for mayor, it means that, you know, that in Philadelphia, the Democrats always win at the end of the day. So what it's going to mean is that we're going to elect someone with maybe 15% of the vote. Do you really want a mayor that wins with 15% of the vote? That's like, that's crazy. So how do we start getting engaged in these mayoral meetings and questions that they're organizing in the community? And how do we organize them and make sure that there are people there who are going to ask very specific questions about what are you going to do about housing affordability? And then break it down. They have to put money to build more affordable housing. The problem is we've lost a whole lot of affordable housing. PHA, it just sold a bunch of houses to New York so they could make money because they were so bad shape that they decided to sell. So we need to have money to build affordable housing. We need to pass laws that say, if you build an affordable development for home ownership for low-income working class people, it doesn't end at the 10-year tax abatement. You can't raise your taxes more than what, 1% every year, so that there's a limit to how you can't just go. And then we just spent our tax dollars building that, and now you're going to raise your taxes like this, so they're going to lose their homes. So let's come up with some practical, reasonable pieces of legislation, and let's get involved in those damn meetings and ask very tough questions so that the business of housing affordability, permanence of neighborhoods becomes a main issue as opposed to this whole thing on ending crime. And every time I hear that ad, it's like, oh dear me, how many busted heads are we going to have? Are we gonna build new jails? Yes, we have to. We're gonna have a lot of people in jail. So we're gonna have a lot of new jails getting built. So let's get involved because that can make a difference in what happens. If we just sit back and it's gonna get worse.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Max. I'm from South Philly. We spent a lot of time talking about how, development, the way it is now really negatively impacts neighborhoods. And even tenants, like I'm a housing counselor, so every day I see, not only illegal evictions, but tenants who are forced into agreements that they can't live up to and can't appeal through the legal system as well. So I guess I wanted to ask more a question about what would development look like if it was more community centered?
Oh, Lord. Well, first of all, I would ban evictions, period. Right? The young person I just mentioned who was evicted on Monday, his eviction was quote unquote legal, but the person sped it up, did it on their own, did it 2 weeks later, took out everything, all this young man's property. As of Tuesday, he didn't know where his things were. He may know by now. But we need to really understand the large numbers of illegal evictions that go on in this town. My situation last year got on the news because they threatened us with guns and all of that. But there are other illegal evictions that do not make the news. Like when a landlord threatens to remove your refrigerator and they know you're diabetic or have some other kind of medical condition and your medicine has to be in the refrigerator.
I've seen landlords remove toilets from their tenants' homes.
There you go, right? Or you come home from work,
The door's off.
the door's off, the windows are off, or the refrigerator's been moved as an act of intimidation, to let you know, oh, I can come in and just remove the whole refrigerator, right? It's crazy out here. Since this happened to me last year and it was on the news, I get calls or I answer the hotline for the Philly Tenants Union, and it's always something about someone's trying to force someone out illegally. Or I'm not sure about my rights, what should I do? We have to tell them, we're not lawyers, we can, direct you to community legal services, turn, etc. But it's really bad out here. And I think what we should do in terms of what Patricia just said, and in terms of Chinatown, we need to organize ourselves. And everybody who's running for office, we put them on point, and they have to tell us, what do you think about the lack of affordable housing? What is your opinion about this arena in Chinatown? And they got to give a clear-cut answer. I don't want no tap dancing. I don't want no violin. Just say where you are on that issue, and then we will move accordingly ourselves. These politicians have taken us for granted for far too long. We need to put pressure on them. The current mayor, the current city council members, all these so-called community leaders need to say where they are on this issue. Everybody running for office needs to tell us where they are regarding Chinatown, and they need to put some effort toward it.
And can we get some people, a group of folks here to come up with whatever email group, like I said, come up with specific legislative proposals that deal with these issues? We can therefore combine the groups so that when we ask the politicians, is not what is it that you're gonna do, and then they go, right? And you say, no, it's like, what would you do about this one? Are you gonna support this one, so that we nail them to specific things that we want to see done?
Yes. I mean, I think there's a shocking lack of vision in the city. Shocking. People are just, I don't think they're stupid. I think they're lazy. And
No,
so
they're
no, they're letting, I'm saying politicians, government, they're letting the corporations dictate what, like, they're defining city revitalization as development. And they mean corporate development, they don't mean human development. And so like, I think Pat's right on in terms of us thinking, what do we want to see when we say revitalize this city? And it means human development. It means like the middle book that Asantewaa put up there by Leslie Kern, her first book on feminist planning is amazing. Like, how do you build cities that are for women and children and their needs? And that shifts the entire focus away from corporate driven development. Like, we need some forward thinking. We need to really look at policies that have worked other places. Why don't we have rent control? I don't understand why we don't have rent control. Why can't we get rid of this tax abatement and give tax abatements to long-term residents, especially in communities that are in danger? Why aren't we adding additional taxes to these REITs so that there are policies, New York has implemented them, Europe is really good. Copenhagen took on Blackstone, and Blackstone no longer can operate there. There is stuff that's happening around this country and around this world that put people first, right? That look at things like not just gross national product, but well-being. Like, how are people doing in this city? That should be the first order of business. So I do think there's a lot to be said about putting together, like, theory is really important for me and vision is really important to me. And then there's on the ground policy stuff that you want to see and demand. I think what underlies that policy stuff is like human rights, basically, right? How are we reclaiming the human rights, the dignity of people in the city?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think as socialists, we should be building a movement, building a people's movement to fight predatory development, but it's also equally as important, if not more, for us to be able to envision and build a socialist future that is community-centered, people-centered. And yeah, thank you again for all the panelists for sharing their thoughts with us. I'm gonna take another question. I think I saw your hand up.
Hello, my name is Mike Jewell. Mike Jewell K. Johnson. I'm from South Philadelphia too. I'm from Point Breeze. I'm also the neighborhood group leader for Point Breeze and Grace Ferry in Reclaim, Philadelphia. And I just want to let everybody know there is a mayor's forum on Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. called Build Philadelphia, which is about the built environment. Environment, if anyone, I think you have to pay to go, but it's, you know, they put at 8 in the morning, but it's.
A mayor's
it is
supposed
what
to do that,
happens.
right?
Yeah, yeah. But what they're on, I think that everything that we've mentioned is some of the things that that have to be spoken about, especially at that forum, but all over, because one of the things that we're seeing when we talk about the vision of the city. The vision of the city is that we've seen so much be destroyed in the city that cannot be replaced. We're talking about Chinatown as a living history of the city. We live in this, and a lot of us actually forget this, is that we live in a city that is the first and so far only World Heritage City in the United States. It means this city has been declared by the United Nations as one whose history is of particular importance, not only to this country, but to the entire world. In fact, the UN, Philadelphia was the city that the UN was supposed to be headquartered in New York, but there's something said, yeah, when New York was able to get land to give to the UN went to New York, but it was supposed to come to Philadelphia first. One of the things that we can address here is that we are living in a city that, when it comes to the properties here, a lot of us are living in very historic housing, historic housing, especially this house right here. here, and I also give Black History tours in Old City, and we tell people all the time that 70% of the city of Philadelphia was built before World War II. Or most of the buildings you see here are late 19th century, early 20th century Victorians, like this house. Like this house. There is value in what is already here. Yet there are things that are being destroyed. You see
shit.
to build shit, exactly.
Mhm.
You see buildings in this, you see places, but there are things that you can build on the history of the city too, without destroying it. If you look at the trolley lines, you have cities now all over the world putting in new trolley lines. Philadelphia already has the largest trolley network in the US. It used to be bigger. Those lines are still there. We can put more in. Then you can save the environment that way too, because they're powered through electricity instead of gas and coal. Gas and coal. They're talking about tearing down the schools in the city because they're quote unquote old. Well, it's funny because I saw people on the stage. I was at the Upper Mayor's Forum the other night, and we had one of the candidates on the stage pitched said, and said, well, the schools are 100 years old, just tear them down. And it's like, I'm saying, I'm looking at the people on the stage, I'm like, well, most of you guys are not that far from 100 yourselves. And it's true, but you look at the buildings, we also have to educate ourselves because you'll have a lot of Philadelphians who might look at the school and say, it's old. Hey, it's old and it looks like a jail. It's like, well, actually, most schools in Philadelphia are in what are called collegiate Gothic, the same architecture used at Harvard and in Yale. Yeah, they're built to be mini colleges. Mini colleges, they can be renovated. Not destroyed. But one things that we can that we have to, like you said, we have to have a vision for the city and a vision of community development. But we also need people in the community to also understand that. Like most people in the community in Philadelphia today don't complain about parking. But then they don't always realize that the same things that make Philadelphia bad for driving make it good for walking. It's one of the 10 most walkable cities in the country. And it actually has more parking spaces than it does people. The problem is people driving cars that don't have to. You have in a city where 67% of people choose to drive, and yet, again, one of the 10 most walkable cities in the country. You have a city where people drive too many cars and cars that are too big. Cars that are too big. Like the problem isn't so much the city's design in many places, in most places. Most places, the problem is people driving cars that don't have to and not enough transit access. Even though the transit access is pretty good compared to places like, say, San Francisco. But we can what I think that we have to that we can do here is that like we also need, like you said, we have to present a vision. That we have to present a vision that is an alternative to what they're also proposing, as well as taking them on. Because, like you said, like why does there have to be? And all the studies have shown that it doesn't. An arena in the middle of downtown doesn't work.
When you have all that land by the river.
All that land by the river and all the land down at the stadiums.
Exactly.
And all the land outside of the homes where these people live.
We don't need the land because they don't need a fucking new stadium. It's less than 20 years, less than 30 years old. They just spent $400 million on a renovation there. Concrete is one of the biggest carbon emitting materials on the planet. And we're just gonna turn over like our carbon footprint to these asshole corporate guys so that they can do a land grab? Like, come on, like this is ridiculous. They don't need a new arena. It's a myth. It's something that's being, and I love, you cannot be from Philly and not love sports.
Right.
I'm sorry. Hockey, no. I trust the process, not this process. So, I think we should be repeating these lines, like they should build it here, they should build it there. They should not build it anywhere. I sound like Dr. Seuss. You know what? That's all we need. And if they say they need it, let them walk. Like, I know the bros out in Delco are gonna hate me for saying it. But, you know, if they go over to Camden, it's like, what, 2 miles? You could walk across the bridge, right? Like, what the heck? You know, we should not be held hostage by these corporate shills. Blitzer and Harris, they own this team, but not just this team, because they are seeing sports and arenas as another way to do land grabs and get equity. Right? They are not doing this because they love sports, and they are not doing this because they love the city, because they don't live here.
Right.
The Harris has got like a $26 million mansion in Florida and another like $16 million mansion in New York. Blitzer keeps his stuff so well covered, you can't figure stuff out, but I did find one mansion in Rhode Island and another one in London.
Wow.
Edelman lives out in Gladwin. They're not from this city. They are not who we are. And when we say development for the people of Philadelphia, that doesn't include them. They are not our people.
Yeah, I'm sure that the arena is a very unpopular project in the city. It's not supported by anyone, anywhere, whether they live in Chinatown, whether they live in North Square. No one supports this project. Even true sports fans are against this project. So this is really just a play project where the multi-billionaires like Jeff or Josh Harris and David Adelman to just spend their obscene amount of money on things that do not matter. So thank you again for all of our panelists. We're gonna take one more question and we're gonna wrap up. Michelle, I think you had a hand up.
So you talked a little bit about just the prior landscape, how there's been several fights within the Philadelphia Chinatown. We have one against a casino, against a different stadium, and how the landscape looks a bit different, and how like strenuous it has been and the potential like loss of this particular fight. And I know you all talked a bit about just continuous corporate created capitalism and REITs. I guess I just would love to hear, especially as we're like dreaming and visioning and thinking about like advocacy and this new mayoral election, like what like tangibly and specifically is different, and like what are some things and like laws and protections to try to pass to change this landscape and like the direction we are going in Philadelphia specifically.
I haven't thought that far ahead, because right now I'm just thinking about stopping my community from being destroyed, right? Like, so, but I think a big piece of stopping the destruction of Chinatown is educating people, helping people understand what's at stake. What, like, it isn't just that Chinatown's an important cultural hub in this community, vital for Asian American identity, 150 years old. It's what Chinatown represents. Chinatown represents one of the few remaining real communities left in this city. Chinatown represents a place where people, the economics are local, the businesses are small and family owned, where our love and our fight for this community, it's not based on a geographic set of buildings. It's based on memory and relationships and mutual care for each other, which is what the whole freaking city should be built on. And so I think like as much as we can, that's why I said like, if Chinatown loses, like we lose more than Chinatown.
Right.
On the other hand, if we can use this as the moment when Philadelphians start to realize like we can fight for ourselves, we can build the city we want to see. Like we can do this. And we can look at places like Chinatown. We can look out in Southwest Philly where Little Africa has been built in what was formerly a really destitute area of the city. Southwest Philly was no fun on Woodland Avenue. Like, we can look at what communities are doing for themselves and building for themselves, and then support that. Because that is real development, and that is real revitalization, and that is a vision that these stupid ass politicians aren't gonna see as long as our politics are dictated by money and donations. You know, so I think, you know, this is a time for folks to like build a movement. We haven't had a movement in a long time in this country, but I think the forces are at the conditions have created the necessity.
Yeah.
For us to build a movement around human rights, human dignity, and take it back.
But I think whomever organized this thing is to start a group on email or whatever. I don't do Facebook. And let's start thinking of specific legislation, for example, when it comes to property taxes. What are specific legislation that we want to put? When it comes to education, this is one of the ones that se cae de la mata.
Falls from the tree.
The Constitution says about equal education. If you fund education through property taxes, you are funding unequal education. Because the wealthy towns, suburbs, cities will get the better education, and then the poorer towns, cities are going to get poor education. So, you know, and the state of New Jersey, they sued the state years ago, and they got them, they agreed that that was unequal education. So the state of New Jersey does not fund its schools based just on property tax. Here, there is a lawsuit pending on that very same issue. Let's push, as part of this thing, you know, equal education needs to have this kind of funding together. Don't ask me what it is that they're proposing or what they did in New Jersey, but let's use this location to form a group, and then this one goes back to property taxes, this one goes back to education. What are the issues that really make it so important in this election? And then, you know, and then we go to these 8 o'clock in the morning. Like mayoral meeting.
There is a mayoral forum on March 26th from 3 to 5 at Rodolph Malone, 615 North Broad. That's the Alliance for Justice. And Alliance for Justice has been building a platform. It's a coalition of community justice seeking organizations who are really looking at what is the platform we want to see. And so, you know, I'd encourage folks to go to that one and to get involved with organizations that are working with groups involved with Alliance for Justice. I think there's an opportunity to build on the work that communities are doing right now in this regard.
Yeah, there's another one going on March 30th at Taller Puertorriqueño. Don't ask me who's doing what's doing, but the thing is, let's identify where they're having them. Let's make sure there are people that go there with specific issues and questions so that they understand where these people coming from. They're all over. Yeah, it's like, you know, you don't have an answer, so we'll give you the answer. Here it is.
I think also too, for next steps, I'm hoping, and I have paper here, we want to pass around a sign-in sheet to work with, say, Chinatown, or to work with Patricia, also the Philly Tenants Union. Let's, you know, pass on some sign-in sheets, let's exchange information and start to organize.
Yeah.
Put it downstairs, I think. I think there was a sign-in sheet downstairs.
Yeah, there was one for you though, one for you in terms of say Chinatown, one for Patricia and North Square.
Yeah, we'll do North Square because I'm gonna change my email because it's already overblown, so.
We should do it as a work, Patricia.
Then you'll have two overblown emails.
Yeah, before we wrap this up, I also want to point out the QR code on the whiteboard. It's a petition to the APIPA well, it's a link to the petition that APIPA put out, and a lot of the organizations in the Safe Chinatown Coalition have been advocating. So it'd be great if everyone could like take a picture and, just sign a petition.
Yeah, what's good about this is that we have a mean organized, like, this is a young person's game, but they know how to take the data, they know how to disaggregate it by zip code, so we can do real targeted stuff on certain city council people. We know when there's certain meetings happening in certain neighborhoods, we'll call out people from those zip codes, so it's a pretty sophisticated data thing happening with the data that's coming in there. I think we have 10,000 signatures now.
Also, if you haven't already been from NAX, arena in Chinatown, solidarity, sorry, there's a lot of acronyms. They are making, well, you can make postcards to write to your city council members, and demanding that no, we do not want the arena outside of Chinatown. It's not good for our community. And I believe it's an ongoing campaign that's been going on for a few weeks, and a lot of community members have already said it. So
Yeah.
that would take place downstairs in the kitchen.
And so we're actually collecting those postcards, so we can again deliver them by councilmanic district as a targeted thing. There are some actions coming up in April. I'm not ready to announce them yet, but they're gonna be big actions, so you'll know about them as we get closer to the date. One of them will be a citywide march on City Hall, and we're hoping to unite everyone, like all the folks that have been working with us together on so many things, like Thrive and UC Townhomes and Reclaim, like everybody, because our, same struggle, same fight. There is a art build, I think, that's actually, I don't even know if it's happening now, but there's a new, or there are two, there's Nakis, there's Spock, there is the restaurant industry for Chinatown's existence that's launching this month called Race, but it is restaurant industry workers and restaurants around the city, because if you're a restaurant industry worker, you know how important Chinatown is. When people that work in the restaurant industry get off of work, the only restaurants left open are in Chinatown, and that's where they all go. So they are starting to join together to support the small businesses in Chinatown. So Rice will be launching. There is also NAF, which is the No Arena Arts Hive. So if you're an artist, look, all these guys are gonna have Instagram, whatever, so you can look for them. One of the things, we keep getting support, like Arch Street Methodist has always been a big supporter of all progressive movements. They called us up, they're under construction. They have fences that go down Arch and down Broad Street and that face City Hall. And they said, you can have our fence, do whatever you want. So like NA's gonna be working on the art for that. So groups are popping up that are really in solidarity and encourage everyone. Nakis and Spock are very active on Instagram, and you can get, and also March 16th in the evening, I'm doing a workshop for School District Philadelphia teachers, but we've opened it up to anybody that wants to come on the history of Philadelphia Chinatown. Yeah. You can get that from whatever Instagram thing you go on, because posters are everywhere on there.
Exactly. I think that's all. This wraps up our event today. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you to our panelists for coming to the Liberation Center and providing us with your feedbacks. And like how we said, like we love to say at the Liberation Center, all power to the people. And all power to the people. All power to the people. All power to the people.